216 BC, August 2nd, dawn. Rome has never fielded an army this large. 80,000 soldiers, the largest force in Roman history, assembled after two consecutive catastrophic defeats at the hands of a Carthaginian general who has been marching through Italy for 2 years, burning everything he cannot carry. His name is Hannibal Barca. He has 50,000 men. He is outnumbered almost 2 to 1. The Roman commanders look at those numbers and feel something they have not felt in this campaign. Confidence. They have the numbers. They have the ground. They have the most disciplined infantry in the world. In 8 hours, somewhere between 55 and 70,000 of those Romans will be dead. Ancient sources differ on the exact count. Polybius says 70,000, Livy says 48,000 killed and 20,000 captured. Historians still argue about the precise number. Nobody argues about what it meant.
And Hannibal will do it without numerical superiority, without siege weapons, without any technological advantage whatsoever. He will do it with geometry. A specific arrangement of men on a field that looked almost impossible to execute, and that military commanders have been trying to replicate for 2,000 years. This is the story of the one day that changed how every army in history thinks about war. To understand why Cannae was geometrically difficult, you need to understand how ancient battles worked. Two armies faced each other across a field. They advanced. They met in the center. The stronger side pushed the weaker side back until one line broke and ran. The winners pursued. The losers died or fled. This was the fundamental mechanics of ancient warfare, and it had one iron rule. You needed more men than the enemy to win. More men meant a wider line. A wider line meant you could overlap the enemy's flanks, extend your formation beyond the edges of theirs, curl around the sides, attack from multiple directions simultaneously. This was called envelopment, and it was the most decisive tactical move available. But envelopment required numerical superiority. You needed extra men to extend past the enemy's flanks, while still maintaining enough strength in the center to hold. Hannibal had 50,000 men. Rome had 80,000. Rome's line was wider. Rome's flanks extended further. If anyone was going to be enveloped, logic said it was Hannibal. Every Roman commander on that field understood this. They had studied warfare. They knew the numbers. They were about to discover that Hannibal had not read the same manual, and that their own formation, dense, powerful, confident, was about to become the instrument of their destruction. Hannibal spent the night before the battle arranging his army in a formation designed around Roman psychology, not Roman numbers. He placed his strongest troops, his African veterans who had marched from Carthage through Spain, across the Alps and down the length of Italy, on the far left and far right flanks, not in the center, on the edges. In the center, he placed his Gallic and Spanish infantry, his less reliable fighters, the men he trusted least to hold a prolonged engagement. And he arranged the center in a specific shape, a convex bulge, curving outward toward the Roman line. The center of Hannibal's formation protruded forward while his flanks hung back. His officers understood what this meant. The center was bait. When Roman infantry advanced and hit that bulging center, they would push it back. The center would bend, and as it bent, the shape would change from a convex bulge toward Rome to a concave curve wrapping around the Romans. The Romans would push into a pocket that was closing around them. But this required the African veterans on the flanks to hold position while the center retreated. For exactly the right amount of time. Not too soon, not too late. The timing had to be precise. The discipline had to be absolute. Nobody had trusted troops to execute something this complex in the chaos of battle. The battle begins at mid-morning.
The Roman infantry advances in a dense mass, deliberately compressed, packed tightly together to maximize pushing force. This is standard Roman tactics. Mass weight in the center.
Use the sheer physical force of tens of thousands of bodies moving forward simultaneously. It works immediately. The Carthaginian center buckles. The Gauls in Spanish infantry fall back under Roman pressure. The Romans push harder. The center retreats further. In the Roman command position, the consul Paulus watches the center giving way and feels the first flicker of doubt. The retreat looks controlled, not a rout, a withdrawal, deliberate. But the legionaries in the center cannot see this. They see the enemy running. They press forward harder, close the gap, keep pushing. The Roman formation compresses further as men push from behind into the space opened by men pushing from in front. The army that started the day stretched across a wide front is now packed into a dense, narrow mass. Thousands of men pressed so tightly together that soldiers in the middle cannot fully raise their sword arms. Polybius describes this precisely. The Roman mass drove deeper and deeper into the Carthaginian center, not realizing the trap was closing behind them. The convex bulge is becoming a concave pocket, and the Roman army is walking deeper into it. On the flanks, Hannibal's cavalry destroys the Roman horsemen, while the infantry center bends around the Roman mass. Hannibal's cavalry, superior in quality and led by his commanders Hasdrubal and Maharbal, drives the Roman and allied cavalry off the field entirely. The Roman flanks are now exposed. No cavalry to protect them. Hasdrubal does not pursue the fleeing Roman horsemen. This is the moment that separates Cannae from every other cavalry engagement in history. Instead of chasing the enemy he has just routed, the natural, instinctive thing to do, Hasdrubal turns his cavalry and rides across the back of the Roman infantry formation. He hits the allied Italian cavalry on the opposite flank from behind. They collapse, caught between Hasdrubal's cavalry from behind and the pressure of battle from in front. Now, both flanks of the Roman army are uncovered. The infantry mass in the center is surrounded on three sides by Carthaginian infantry curling around them. Behind them, Hasdrubal's cavalry is sealing the fourth side. The pocket is closed. Tens of thousands of Roman soldiers are standing in a field completely surrounded by a smaller army. So compressed, they cannot fight effectively. So densely packed that men in the interior are dying not from wounds, but from suffocation as the circle contracts. There is no direction to run. There is no formation to form. What happened inside that circle is documented by ancient sources in terms that modern historians find difficult to fully accept. The killing lasted approximately 6 hours. 6 hours because there were so many Romans packed so tightly that the Carthaginians physically could not reach them all fast enough. Soldiers in the outer ring died first. As they fell, the circle contracted. The next ring died. The circle contracted again. Polybius describes Romans still alive, buried under piles of dead, and some who had dug themselves into the earth trying to end their own suffering faster. The consul Paulus was wounded early and refused to flee. He was found dead on the field, sitting against a stone, too exhausted to move. A young Roman officer offered his horse so Paulus could escape. Paulus refused. The other consul, Varro, survived. He rode to the town of Venusia with the remains of the cavalry. He sent a message to Rome. The message required no elaboration. Between 55 and 70,000 dead, depending on which ancient source you follow. Historians still argue about the precise count. They do not argue about the outcome. Rome had just lost approximately 1 in 5 of its adult male citizens in a single afternoon. The army was not defeated, it was eliminated. In Rome, the Senate met in emergency session. The reports arriving from Cannae were so catastrophic that the Senate initially refused to believe them. Women were forbidden from weeping in public.
The Senate feared mass panic. Temples were closed. All festivals were canceled. 2 Vestal virgins were buried alive. This was Rome's most extreme religious response to disaster, an attempt to appease gods who had withdrawn their favor. Then the Senate did something that Hannibal, watching from the battlefield, did not expect. It did not negotiate. Hannibal sent an emissary to Rome. He offered terms: ransoms for prisoners, a peace settlement, recognition of Carthaginian interests in the Western Mediterranean. His calculation was rational. After a defeat this catastrophic, Rome would have to make peace. No state could absorb this loss and continue fighting. The Senate refused to even receive the emissary. It passed a law forbidding any discussion of peace terms. It refused to ransom the prisoners, condemning thousands of Roman soldiers to slavery, but sending an unmistakable message. Rome would fight until there was nothing left to fight with. Hannibal had won the greatest tactical victory in the history of warfare, and in doing so, he had revealed something about Rome that would eventually destroy him. Why didn't Hannibal march on Rome? This question has followed Cannae for 2,000 years. After the greatest battlefield victory in ancient history, with Rome's armies destroyed and the road to the city open, Hannibal turned south into Campania and went into winter quarters. His cavalry commander, Hannibal, reportedly said, "You know how to win a victory, Hannibal, but not how to use one." The practical explanations are real. Hannibal had no siege equipment.
Rome's walls were formidable. His army was exhausted. He was far from his supply base. Carthage was not sending the reinforcements he needed. But the deeper answer is strategic. Hannibal's plan was never to destroy Rome militarily. It was to break Rome's alliance system, to show Italy's cities that Rome could not protect them, and watch the alliance dissolve as city after city defected. After Cannae, some cities did defect. Capua, the second largest city in Italy, joined Hannibal. Several others followed, but most of Rome's allies held. They had watched Rome absorb Cannae and refused to negotiate, and they concluded that an ally who refused to surrender after losing 55,000 men in one afternoon was an ally worth keeping. Hannibal spent 14 more years in Italy. He never lost a major battle. He never took Rome. Rome's response to Cannae was the most consequential military adaptation in ancient history. Roman commanders studied what had happened. Not to assign blame, the Senate pointedly thanked Varro for not despairing of the Republic, but to understand the mechanics of what Hannibal had done. The rigid maniple system was gradually replaced with more flexible cohort structures that could respond independently to changing battlefield conditions. Roman commanders became obsessive about protecting their flanks. The cavalry arm was strengthened and its role elevated to primary concern. More fundamentally, Rome learned what it meant to fight a commander who thought in 3 dimensions, not just the collision of 2 lines, but the shape of the entire battlefield and how geometry could close around an enemy. This lesson was learned so thoroughly that Roman commanders began attempting double envelopments themselves. Scipio Africanus used a modified version of the Cannae maneuver at the Battle of Ilipa in Spain in 206 BC. He used it again at Zama in 202 BC, the battle that ended the Second Punic War and destroyed Hannibal's army. Rome lost between 55 and 70,000 men at Cannae. Then it used the lesson to destroy the man who taught it. Modern military historians are careful about one point that popular history often overstates. Cannae did not single-handedly change military doctrine for 2,000 years. What changed doctrine was the later interpretation of Cannae, particularly in 19th and 20th century German military theory, where the battle became almost a sacred text. Schlieffen built his entire plan for World War I around the Cannae model. He wanted to envelop the French army exactly as Hannibal had enveloped Rome. The plan failed because no modern army can be controlled with the precision Hannibal achieved, and because the French did not cooperate by walking into the pocket.
The word cannae entered military vocabulary as a concept. Double envelopment,
The surrounding of an enemy by a smaller force through maneuver rather than mass. Norman Schwarzkopf's left hook in the Gulf War in 1991 was described by analysts at the time as a Cannae maneuver. What Hannibal proved was not that larger armies lose to smaller ones. It was that the right geometry, executed with enough discipline and at exactly the right moment, can make numbers irrelevant. His center retreated on purpose. His flanks held when everything in battle instinct screamed to advance. His cavalry turned back when every cavalry commander in history would have given chase. Every decision required men to do the opposite of what fear and instinct demanded. The geometry was not the miracle. The discipline to execute it was. 2,000 years later, generals still study that shape.